The wizard.
Had a question about training a 3-sport athlete in high school with the conjugate model. And basically, what I would do is, while they're in season, if their schedule allows it, I'd hit a max effort lower day early in the week, maybe even on a Sunday if you had to. And then a max effort upper, maybe Tuesday or Wednesday-ish, depending when their weekend competition would be. And then I'd have a third day, kind of optional, base it on whether they have the energy and the time and, are dedicated enough to get a third day in. And you can do a couple different things with that third day. You could do like a combo speed day. Like I went over in the book, we have that template for that third day is a combo speed day, and then accessories for upper and lower. That'd be a good option. But you could also just do accessory day. Do some rep work for the weaker areas of the body. Either one would work fine. I think it kind of depends on your kid, where they're at, what you think they need. Me personally, I think most of the time I would get a few sets of speed work in there on squat and bench, and then fill the rest in with accessory work. Probably a little bit easier, less taxing, kind of special exercises or isolation type work, so they can recover real quick. Maybe you go 4 sets of speed work on each squat and bench. That'd be an option. Or if you're just going to do the accessory work without any speed work on that third day, you can do that too. Just kind of depends what the athlete needs and what you think they're ready for. Motivation plays a big part into it. Like me and my one friend used to lift like an hour before our basketball games. So, we didn't care. Honestly, I felt like it helped me. I was a shitty basketball player, so it doesn't really matter. But, everybody's going to be different. Talk with your athlete and see where they're at, see what they want to do. Now when I say max effort work in season, I'm talking about the lane, so it wouldn't have to be true max effort work. If you get a high school kid and you don't think 1 rep max is the best thing for them, you can hit some heavy sets of 5, 5 rep max, multiples, sets of 2, 90%, something like that. And the 90% is just a guideline. It's not an actual number. Almost like an RPE. The athlete tells you that was a 9 out of 10. You think it's a 9 out of 10. Hit that weight for 4 to 2 sets of 2. I'm a big fan of the doubles. We talked a little bit about last week. I think it's close enough to the true max effort work, where we get that stimulus we need, but also gives the athlete a little more time under the bar, which a lot of them need, without getting too far away from 90%. So I'm a fan of doubles. So, if I was doing it, obviously depending on the athlete and stuff, there's a good chance I'd go 4 to 5 sets of doubles. So Coach, what did you think was going to work but ended up not? Vice versa. That's a good question. What did I think was going to work but didn't? on, I tried to do. I'm trying to think. It was with volleyball. Early on with my volleyball kids, I was using Prilipin's chart, and it ended up being too light for them. It just, for whatever reason, it was kind of light. So, and that was, everybody says use Prilipin's chart, but I think it's important to realize the athletes that were used on Prilipin's chart may not be the athletes you have. So just kind of use those as a guideline. Another mistake, I've talked about this before, we use Donnie Thompson's squat cycle, which is awesome. I love it. But I think with athletes, it's a good idea to throw in some close stance work every couple weeks. Whereas on that program, you may be wide stance the whole time. So I think it's good to throw some of that in there. That's probably a mistake I made. Something I didn't think was going to work that did. It's hard to say, because if I didn't think it was going to work, I wouldn't have put it in. I'm trying to think. So my assistant, and not that I didn't think this wasn't going to work, but he took over the crew team, and instead of switching out their main lift every week, he left it in there for like I want to say 6 weeks. I think he stayed with Camber Bar for like 6 weeks, but he did vary it a little bit. So the first 2 weeks was just straight weight, and then I want to say the next 2 weeks he threw a chain on, and then for the next 2 weeks I want to say he put bands on. So that's something I normally wouldn't do, but it worked really well. Usually I would switch the stimulus up on him a little bit, but he kind of kept the same bar, but just varied the committing resistance a little bit. And that worked real well. That's something I typically wouldn't do, but okay. Come back to it. Come back to what? That's something I typically wouldn't do, that worked well. I don't know, I'm having a hard time thinking of stuff, because like I said, if I don't think it doesn't work, I'm not going to put it in. Unless, like, there's a few people that I trust that will say, hey, we did this and it worked, and I would, if it wasn't something I was not going to do, that I would, put it in, even if it's something I wouldn't. Does that make sense? There's another thing. We had a coach that was kind of insistent on free squatting. So what we did is, after our speed work, we would pull the box out. I've talked about this before, but so to put the free squats in, we would pull the box out after our speed work and decrease the bar weight by about 10%, and then have the athletes do like 2 or 3 sets of 5s where they still try to push on the bar fast. And we would bring their stance in a little bit too. So it was more of a medium stance squat, probably wide by some people's standards, but the point is, we brought their feet in a little bit because the box wasn't there, to give them a little more security, and they did really well with it. So that was maybe something I wouldn't have done on my own if a coach hadn't, kind of pushed for it. But it ended up working well. We got good feedback from the kids too, so those are a couple things. Squatting out of chains. What I used to do when I would get new ideas or whatever, I would generally test it out myself first. Not always, but maybe a little bit. And then our throwers would basically get guinea pigged over the summer. Then if they did all right with things, then our other groups might get it. And our athletes did a really good job squatting out of chains, which I was pleasantly surprised at. I thought it would be a bit of a clusterfuck. They did a pretty good job, really, overall. And I was glad too, because I think that's a really good way to do your speed work. Stole that from Donnie as well. It forces you to squat correctly. You can't. So when you rest the bar in the chain, if you rock backwards like a lot of people tend to do on the box, you'll fall on your ass. So the athlete has to keep a forward lean and keep their glutes and hamstrings loaded. But you're still getting that static to dynamic stimulation like you do off the box. But our kids did really well with that. And I didn't think it would go like that, honestly. But we threw it in there and they did a good job. And back to the question. So, like a 3-sport athlete, if they're in season, get those 2 mandatory days in, get that third, like quote unquote optional day. And then as soon as they're out of season, I'd throw them on 4 days a week conjugate, if I can. So that's how I'd run it. All things being up to me in the off season, I'm going to run a 4-day conjugate if I can. I think that's where we can make the most improvement. And then once they're back in season, scale it back a little bit. And maybe, let's say they're new to it, maybe that first in-season round you have with them, they can only handle 2 days a week. And then, so they go through that season 2 days a week, and then you get some off time for them, train them 4 days a week. If you do it right, then you're building up their work capacity and tolerance to training. So that second season that you have them, then you can make that third day just part of the routine. And it's like no big deal because they're used to that workload. So you're slowly bringing them up and building things up for them. So that's what I would do, thinking on that a little bit more. All right, time to lift. Thanks for the questions. Reese, you got anything? No? What type of height was I using? How do I gauge what works and what doesn't? Most athletes are very untrained, so most things are going to work because they have like the same weaknesses. And just experiment. Only the strong. What type of height was I using? Squatting out of the chains, I'm guessing. Hold on, Reese. Squatting out of chains, we'd let them go like an inch or two above parallel because those squatting out of the chains can beat your hips up. So with them having to deal with practice and everything else, we'd let them go a little bit higher and they'd still get a good stimulus. They're still, we were getting some soreness afterwards and stuff. Not that that's your only indicator, but things seem to work well. And I do the same thing when I'm doing it. If I'm not at parallel, that's fine because squatting out of those things is a bitch. But then I make sure my box is at parallel when I go off the box. What is this? There, broken. How do you program if you're at high school level where the kids are multiple sport athletes, always in season? So I would go 2 days a week, 2 heavy days a week if they're in season, and then have that third day of accessory work and try to kind of fit that in there if they can handle it. But if they're in season, just go 2 days a week, like a third day, less taxing, optional, to kind of bring up some weak areas. And then as soon as they're out of their season, give them a week to like calm down, and then get them up to 4 if you can. If they're going right to another season, then just slowly work that third day in so they can handle, the increased workload and stuff. Maybe you start that third day is 1 set of everything, and then the next week is 2 sets, and then the next week 3 sets. So that way they're slowly building up and can adapt to it. And they're in high school, they can handle a lot. But just to have a system to kind of work it in there slow is a good idea. What? No, put your lid on and take it in. Yep, you got it. Send me some questions if you have them. If that didn't answer your question, send me some questions. I'll get to it. Okay. If you're squatting out of the chains out of a monolift, you drape your chains or straps or whatever you squat over the top, and then if you set it to one guy parallel with his rack height, it'll get most everyone else on that rack close to parallel as you adjust the rack height. So there's not a huge amount of difference in everyone's, as long as there's not a huge height difference. But like 6'3" guy and a 5'11" guy can use the same strap height out of the monolift, because as you adjust the monolift, the straps are going up and down too. So that's worked well. So it's not like you have to change the strap height every time. If you're going in a group, just adjust the monolift and it'll get you. So in-season training is real simple. If you're in season, usually just go 2 days a week. Have like an optional third day with some accessory stuff. Start sneaking that in there so the kids can get used to it. With your volume, we don't go crazy on the volume like we do out of season. So in season, volume is going to be like 3 to 5 sets. And it's not very often you'll get up to 5 sets. Most of the time is between 3 and 4. Time to go lift. Thanks for all the questions, guys. Appreciate it. Busy today. Good shit. If you guys have any questions or equipment needs, get a hold of me, nharvey@elitefts.net. All right? Later.